11 authors, 11 stories of danger, death, the thin knife's edge of right and wrong, murder, hatred, justice. What is the answer? Within these pages, you may find it.
Well, I don't know. It's a shame that we didn't get more, because I really like the concept, the buddy cop scenario, or that type of dynamic works well already by itself, and then you have rich worlds of a backlog for each of these authors that you can get into and then come to this.
Week 4. Week 4 of a very tough case. One we may have gotten to the bottom of, or maybe not.
We either got to the bottom of it, or we got off the track and we started something whole brand new world here.
We either got to the bottom of it, or it got to the bottom of us.
It's very true.
The bottom of the old drinking glass was gotten to. Yeah, that's a good point. What is this thing that we've stumbled upon here? This, dare I say, masterpiece of crime fiction. But is it a noir?
Did we stumble upon the noir that was so sweet that that redefined the genre, or was it so entirely different that it's not even in the genre? That's the question of the day, I guess.
Yeah. Just like this podcast, it's about two handsome studs from different parts of the United States who originally butted heads. I'm just kidding, that part didn't happen. We were talking about Double in Trouble by Richard S. Prather and Stephen Marlowe. One of the only crossover novels I've ever heard of.
Yeah, I mean, the only one I've read, I think. Yeah, I can't think of another one. There might be one lurking in my memory somewhere of a crossover, but I don't know. And even if so, it might have been two characters written by the same guy, brought together, and that might be what I'm thinking. But two different authors coming together.
The closest thing to this that I've ever read before is One Man's Treasure by Terrence Layhew, because it has the every other chapter is an alternating first person POV, but he wrote both of those guys. Which is impressive. But this book is just fantastic, dude. This is the problem with you can just, I've read all the Scott and Chet Drum books, or most of them, and this is kind of your first intro to both of the characters. And what were your thoughts off the rip? We can just about the characters, not necessarily about the story.
Yeah, I came away liking Shel Scott more out of this one, and I want to read more Shel Scott, but ultimately it is a nice preview, I guess, to both, or a nice setup to getting you into the world of both of them, and I'll definitely make my way around to Chet Drum as well, because in this story, as you're flipping through, I'm never like, oh man, okay, another Chester scene, or oh, now we're with Shel, I want to get back to... There's never that, which I found very impressive. To the point where it so cohesively works together, and they complement each other so well, and both characters are so engaging themselves, that before you taught me how to put headings on as I was listening to this, I didn't know who was who, but I was always like, yes, I'm fully involved. This story has got me.
Yeah, this guy's cool.
I was like, whoever that is, I like that guy. So it was almost like a dating show where they remove the names and they're behind the walls, and you're like... I just got to hear about him, and then finally figured out halfway through who was who. But, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's what's so cool about it. And it's almost like you and I were talking as we were getting through this book, and we were like, yeah, they're written so similarly, but there is just enough difference that, like, if you pick this book up, either reading it or listening to it, and you haven't, like, you're in the middle of a chapter, you will not know which character it is until someone throws a name around, because they're both really hard-boiled. They both have really, like, funny things that they'll say offhand. Both of these dudes wear shoulder holsters. Both of them are big guys. It's just too cool. I remember, so I found Chester Drum in 2020, I think, right after the pandemic happened. I was going through school, and one of my teachers was like, hey, everybody should get Harford County Public's library online library card. You get a ton of free things. I was like, free things for sure. And so, I mean, it took me a while, and halfway through the semester, I was like, I'll do this. And I found about Hoopla and Libby and all this stuff. And on Hoopla, I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but I found Chester Drum's book series, and they are no longer, you really can't buy it. There's no, like, reprints of them. They're exclusively digital. So I found the ebooks, and I read the first one. I was like, damn, that was sick. And then I saw that there were like 19 more. I was like, no way, this is the coolest thing ever. And so I read all those, and I really liked them. And then probably in like 2022 or so, I was like, oh man, I wish I had something like Chester Drum. And I just stumbled upon Shel Scott, and I was like, oh dude, this guy's also over 6 feet tall, around 200 pounds, wears a gun in a shoulder holster. I wonder if this guy copied Chester Drum. And then, like, halfway through book 4, Chester Drum's name is thrown out, and I was like, what the hell? How is this possible? And it was literally like a mental break moment. And then I found out that they had a crossover book, and I was like, dude, you're telling me that two absolute stud authors and absolute stud characters existed in each other's world? Like, how is this the only time this has ever been done? Because the book is fantastic. I mean, I don't know how you felt about it or what you would rate it out of 10, but it is just so stinking good. And it's like, at the end, it's from Chester Drum's perspective as the final chapter, and he's like, I had a feeling I would run into Scott again, and when that happened, it was going to be hell for everybody, maybe even us. And it's just like a perfect ending for them to come back to, and then they never did it again, dude. It's so devastating.
Wonder why. Like, yeah. Wonder why they wouldn't have, because they clearly did set up a sequel, you know. He's like, next time we'd be working on the same side from the beginning, and like, you kind of tell you where we're going to head. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how late in the game they wrote this. Maybe one of them died, or maybe retired.
I don't think so. I think this was like right in their prime. I think it was book 8 for both of them, or book 9 or something like that.
Maybe it didn't sell well. I don't know. It's a shame that we didn't get more, because I really like the concept, the buddy cop scenario, or like, you know, that type of dynamic works well already by itself, and then you have rich worlds of a backlog for each of these authors that you can get into, and then come to this. It's, I don't know, it's like what Marvel did that changed cinema, where it's like, let's give each one of these characters their own thing, and now we're all super invested in the main story. So I can only imagine what that would have been like for you to find one, go through his catalog, find another, go through his, and then realize they intersect, and you're, dude, I mean, that's mind-blowing, and the odds of that are so low of that happening.
It was nuts, dude. I like, Chester Drum is my all-time favorite fictional character. Shel Scott is probably number like 3 or 4. We talked about my list earlier in the week. He is just, this is what, we'll get into this book. So I'll describe this book, and you tell me if it's noir. 2 guys, one guy on one side of the country, one guy on the other side of the country, are both in the middle of facing down the trucking union racket. Shel gets a late night call from a beautiful woman, and she asks him to help her find her missing father. All she gives her is the name Frost, and her father is the number 1 witness to crack open the truckers union criminal case. So these guys are just bad dudes, right? So that happens, and he goes out to leave with her, or to follow her around or something, and he sees 2 I think the term that they like to throw around is yeg. Yeg is an old-fashioned term for criminal, which I didn't know, but I know that because one of the Shel Scott books is called The Scrambled Yegs, which is a fantastic name. So Shel goes after her and immediately gets shot at, right? Don't they try and take him out? Because he has to go back to his place to get his shoulder holster.
Yes.
For some reason, he left
He
without
didn't
a
have it
shoulder
on
holster.
him, right?
Yeah. And when he gets back, he gets a call from a really good friend. And he rolls up to his really good friend who's like, Shel, I need some help, buddy. And he gets there, and it's one of the most like gruesome descriptions of a guy ever, right? Like he's got a and
it's in this book too. It's like the most gruesome part of the book, I think. It never returned to that level.
It happens in the first chapter too. After truly one of the goofiest opening scenes of all time. Like Shel opens the door and he's totally naked, but he's like peeking through, and the lady just busts right in, and they're both like, "What's going on?" And she like runs out, terrified, and then on top of that, he grabs a robe in the dark, and it's like this ultra intimate kimono type of thing, and he's like, "Why is you looking at me weird?" And then he looks down and he's like, "Oh, did not mean to put this one on." And so we go from like a really goofy opening to like you said, the most gruesome part of the entire book. You described it perfectly when you were saying how was he was like super beat up somehow.
Well, dude, we got to go back and say that the robe, he literally goes on this long description of how this is the robe he likes to boink in, and he starts talking about women as tomatoes, and he's like, I got this from a nice tomatoes, and it's the funniest like long explanation about his robe and how it's the boinking robe, and he must have made her blush and all that, but like we go from that to this guy who he describes as this is what always stuck with me, is he describes the guy's neck being like without bone or muscle, and it like is just flopping all around.
Yeah, dude. Brutal.
And his bone, like you said, they talk about his bone being stuck out through the skin, and it's just this mangled, horrifying mess of a guy. I sent Nathanael the picture of Rocky holding Apollo at the end, because it's kind of what he does is like he's holding his guy, and those guys are driving by, and you just know you pissed off Shel, and now he's going to take off the kimono, dude, put the shoulder holster on, and he's going to get to work.
Nah, dude, not the kimono. If you really piss him off, he goes after you in the kimono. It's game over.
You don't want to get to that level.
Yeah, so that happens, and then we jump across the country to Chester Drum, right? And he just got off a case in Richmond, Virginia, and he works out of D.C. So he's driving from the airport back to D.C., and he sees a taxi zip past him, and then right behind the taxi, he sees another car zip past him. And he's like, all right, well, that looks bad. And then he comes up, and the taxi's pulled over, and there's two jokers getting out of the other car, and they're grabbing a beautiful woman out of the vehicle. And he just pulls up and jumps over, and he's like, all right, what the heck's going on here? And they're like, what are you doing here, guy? And the one guy throws a punch at him, and he just moves out of the way, and the guy punches his car. He's like, hey, what the heck did you do that for? We don't have to make this look super real. And Chet's like, what? and the guy's like, wait a minute, who are you? And Chet's like, I'm taking this girl away from here because you guys are messing her up. And so immediately he's like put into this fake snatch job where a guy named Townsend Holt was supposed to come save this girl. And we never get this girl's name, but she's a beautiful blonde, somewhat similar looking to the one who met Shel a couple hours ago in Los Angeles. And she was coming from the airport. Coincidence? I don't know. So Chet gets her out of there. They go to a diner, a late night diner, and get some coffee. And he's like, what's your name? And she's like, I'm not telling. And he's like, well, I'll be able to figure it out when I get your luggage back. And she's like, oh, my luggage, I need that. I'll hire you to find my luggage. And he was like, all right, sounds like a deal. And so right now, dude, you're set up with two guys on two opposite sides of the country. Absolute crazy violence, a big kidnapping job gone wrong. And it's all because of the trucker union who, like we said, they're behind the first guy's death, and they're behind this faked kidnapping dude. So off the bat, it kind of seems like a noir story, you know?
With the woman walking into the office at the beginning, that's so classic of where we get our mission briefing from the lady.
Exactly. And then it's got the tough first-person narration, two tough guys. But, dude, it is just too funny to be a noir, right?
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like the writing with that is so like if noir is dark and we're looking at that, it is a dark world, but the guys are so funny and like it's written in such a way that, like I was saying
Yeah,
about Shell in particular, it's almost like, and you described it better as Magnum PI, but it's like it almost felt like a action comedy for him. But it is more
right.
Magnum PI than it would be Rush Hour to that point. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
not like,
dude.
oh, this is goofy, but he's just like it'd be like if a comedian level guy was the master
Noir.
detective stud. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's just so funny, and he's always being
he's always
hilarious.
making jokes. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we can just go through it like we've done with the last 2 weeks where we just spoiled the whole thing. So if you have not watched or read Double and Trouble, there's a link to a PDF online to or a page through thing online. It is super engaging. You should be able to get through it pretty quickly, I think. But we'll go through it. So after that, this is what's cool. Every chapter it switches back from Chet to Shell and Shell to Chet, and it just takes off running from there. So Shell is really broken up about his buddy getting killed, and so he goes to meet his buddy's sister. Now, of course, we all know where this is headed, dude. A romance is going to blossom, or is it a romance?
break
Who
out
knows?
the kimono. Let's go.
There we go. We got our opening tagline for the beginning. So he goes there, and it turns out that Braun had found, or he had been working at odds with the truckers union from the rip. Right, this guy's like, I hate these dudes. They're strong arming us. So the truckers union this whole time has been making these guys, like, it was originally a good thing that needed to happen because the truckers were getting taken advantage of. But now they're getting taken advantage of by the union. And so Braun's been trying to fight them from within. And he went to, it's Ragan, right? Is
Yeah,
the one guy. All right, let's talk about the names real quick. So this is what's so cool. We got Chester Drum, and on his side of the country, there's Mike Sand and Abamonte. And also kind of Townsend Holt, and then the Torgensen father and son duo. So you got like 5 bad guys right
yeah,
there, and then
yeah.
he's got the cronies. So on his side it's Glasses and Rover, dude. What fantastic names for bad
The
guys.
glasses. Yeah, usually the old henchmen don't get the fleshing out that these henchmen do. Because when I heard glasses in the finale too, I was like, dude, still got glasses. He's got the arc going, and he's gonna get revenge on glasses. I love that. It's something in the Punisher 2004. He marks this one guy who's like pretty important to making him not be able to save his family because he kept him held up in a fight. So he like
Yeah.
marks him for later. He like slashes his face, and then he gets really bad treatment in the end. And it reminded me of that, where like
Yeah.
glasses dude gets one on is it Chester that he gets one on?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think
and
this is the thing that's cool though, is they're across the back and forth so much that they all get one on each other.
Right.
Like the whole.
But I like that in the end, Glasses got his, dude. I was
Yeah,
happy
dude.
to see Glasses
Yeah,
get him
that
back
was
in the
cool.
end.
And then on the other side is Happy Jack Ragan is what his name is, and he has Mink and Candy. So just dude, we got Glasses and Rover and Mink and Candy. What are these?
Just
These
the
are
names,
such good names. This is the sort of stuff that, as a writer, if you're watching this, you should be writing this stuff down to like run away with these ideas somehow. Like they're just perfect. You hear the names and you're like, man, that's a crime guy for sure.
Dude, the writers, that point is so good because I thought I've read a decent amount of books, nowhere near as amount as that you have, but like I've heard people talk about heartbeats being elevated before, but I've never heard them say that their heart was shaking like hula dancer's fanny. And I was like, oh, excuse me? What are you talking about, guy? It's the best descriptions. These guys come up with the most unique ways of saying stuff. It's
Yeah,
unreal.
you really liked the one about the guy was bald
Guy being
as
so bald, yeah.
a cab tire that was getting put out to pasture. It's too funny. Yeah, well, I screenshotted a bunch of my favorite lines, so I'll read a few of them at the end because they're too funny. And there's one scene in particular that I really think is just like expert storytelling. So this is what we're getting at. Like, these guys are funny dudes. Imagine all of the funniest scenes. So take Out of the Past and Maltese Falcon that we had last week. And but there's times in those movies where I laughed out loud, from Sam Spade saying a line, or Jeff Bailey saying a line. Was it Bailey?
Yeah, dude, nice recall, dude. What a guy.
Those guys had some really funny lines. Now, take an equally serious story, but just make everything that those dudes say be funny the entire time. And it's no longer noir, I don't think. This is what's so tough.
Yeah.
Like we could debate it for a long time because we talked before about The Nice Guys, and that one seems pretty heavy in the noir, but it's also definitely a comedy. But these guys are just funny dudes to the point where like Luke would call me after he'd gotten through a big chunk and we'd just like laugh the whole time for like 20
just
minutes
talking
talking
about some
about
of these monologues. Dude, that's, I was thinking about it yesterday. I was like, yeah, is this noir? Is it not? Why is it not? Because every fill in the blank answer we talked about seems like we would all agree is noir. It does fit, but in some way it just doesn't. It goes back to one of your original points of like, if it doesn't feel like it does, it's not. It just doesn't feel like it to me. But why? I mean, it is. You got the private eyes, like you're talking about. The stakes are. It's a very dark world. It's organized crime. But maybe I was thinking like if we switched it from organized crime and kind of like Jimmy Hoffa union mobster stuff to just like street level criminals, would we be easily saying, yeah, this is noir? Like,
Yeah.
why is that? I don't know. Why I cannot figure out why I can't say easily, yes, definitively, yes, this is noir.
Right. And even
There's no real reason.
Even to the fatal flaw idea, both of these guys are so stubborn to how they see things that they literally end up almost killing each other at the end of the book. Like that's a pretty fatal flaw. It's like, no, dude, I'm the right stud. You know what I mean? You're not. I'm gonna kill you.
Because he smashed his face up so much that it helped him become unrecognizable at the end, which was
yeah, dude, truly fantastic. So we'll get back into the linear storylines that you guys are like, whoa, what happened? So Shell goes and he meets up with Kelly, which is his best buddy's sister, and she, of course, is a beautiful tomato, redhead Irish lady. She's all broken up. She had to identify her brother, and her brother was pretty much unrecognizable, so she had to go through that trauma. She says something to Shell, which is she's like, "This is the problem with you men. There's not enough woman in you." And Shell's like, "What?" And she's like, "You have to be 200% men, that you never even say hi to each other, that you love each other. And that's why you never saw my brother before he died." And he's like, "Damn, I'm out here catching strays." Like, this ain't right. He's like, and then I think his inner monologue was like, "Well, I don't have to send flowers to everybody that I like, especially not the guys." I was like, "Dude, this is a great writing." Like, this is honestly pretty realistic. I feel like someone coming at you being like, "You weren't a good enough friend to my brother," and he's like, "I'm not sending flowers to your brother." It was hilarious, but also sad. Because then he said something like, "But then I thought of the flowers I would send to his grave." And I was like, "Dude, even in the middle of this comedy gold thing, like a good reminder to love your friends while you have them, dude." Crazy stuff. So he gets through that, and then we jump back to Chet, and Chet's going the taxi angle to try and find this suitcase. So he's working the angles. That's where he meets the bald guy, as bald as a cab tire that had to be changed and put away. And it turns out that a lot of the cab guys owe money to this shady figure who was at one point just kind of a street tough named Abamonte. But now he's one of the leaders of the good old-fashioned truckers union. But he has a bunch of gambling debts on a bunch of people. So the one guy, Charlie Derleth, is part of the taxi stuff. And he is sort of working for them. We're unsure. So Chet goes to the scene of the crime with Charlie, and the guy who was driving the taxi that had the girl who got kidnapped, he got paid off and he was supposed to do it. But since the snatch job went wrong because of Chet, they absolutely brutally murdered this guy. Again, they killed him with brass knuckles, which, brutal stuff. So that kind of is where it ends there with the cliffhanger there. And then back to Shell. He is really running to ground on this. So he goes to the trucker union headquarters, and it says something like "Welcome, brother" on the sign. And he was like, the first guy I ran into was definitely not welcoming me. And I think this guy was over in Washington, but later on, Shell runs into this dude, and he's like a classic, kind of like a greaser vibe, right? They described him as like he wore big jeans and a t-shirt, and he had like his hair cut short, basically a mullet with a ducktail or something like that. And he said that the way that he walked, I expected him to putt over to me on his motorcycle, like across the room. And I was like, dude, this is hilarious descriptions. So that guy and Chet ran into each other, and they didn't like each other very much, and they were going to beat him up. And Chet gets to talking to Abamonte, so back from Shell, who was at Trucker's headquarters on the one side, to Chet's at the Trucker's headquarters on the other side, dude. This is what, to Luke's point, if you're not paying attention, dude, you're like, who am I following right now? Where am I? What's going on? And Chet gets some information out about everything going on with the taxi cab driver and all that stuff. And right as he's about to get through that, Glasses and Rover roll up, and they just come after him. They immediately start swinging, and he's able to like knock the one guy over. Glasses literally gets stepped on by a beautiful woman, and Rover is able to get knocked out. But then when Chet turns around, Glasses has his brass knucks on, and he just starts putting the absolute. There's a crazy line where he's like, he punched low, but it was low enough that I was able to turn my leg into the punch, and my leg immediately went numb. And I was like, dude, the getting punched in the leg would not be fun, but with
brassy knuckies too. No thanks. No,
yeah,
thank you.
Like that at all.
The beating he takes in that scene is pretty brutal as well. And I've told you this when we were talking on the phone about it. I thought it was funny, and I liked that it shows Chester Drum's like comfortability in a fight, that mid getting destroyed with brass knuckles, he's like, hey, you should calm down with those brass knuckles. You could accidentally kill someone with those. Yeah. I know you meant to kill the guy yesterday, but watch out. Yeah, he's like talking the guy through not doing it.
a very self-aware moment. And so he gets knocked unconscious, and then we jump back to Shell, and he, at the headquarters, he lets something slip that he knows that Braun Thorne, his buddy, had stolen paperwork, and they were like, he must have called his sister. And then all of a sudden, so it was Ragan and Mink and Candy, and all of a sudden Mink and Candy are gone, and Shell's like, where'd those guys go? And Ragan's like, what do you mean where'd those guys go? What are you talking about? And Shell's like, oh brother, they're going to find, like, the only way they could have known that they called the sister is if they were outside watching his house to see that she didn't leave and Braun didn't come there. So they know where she lives. They're going to kill her. And then they have that sick fight scene with the chair, dude.
Yeah. Launches the chair at him while he's getting shot out, and it talks about how he sees like the bullet buck the chair as before it smashes into the guy. It's like pretty intense stuff.
That's great. And then he dives right after the chair and just beats the guy up. And then he leaves and he drives to the house. Right as he gets to the house, they've got her like out on the porch and they're pulling her to the car. And then there's a pretty sick fight scene here, right? Like, I think he quick draws from the shoulder holster, slugs one of the guys. They're shooting at each other like point blank range. And then he gets her and they run away. And he and the girl are able to get away and go back to his apartment. Cue the kimono. And then we jump back to Chet. And Chet wakes up absolutely just beaten to heck and back. They were going to take him to get killed, but the beautiful woman that he has on this side of the country helped him out. And she's actually Bald Charlie's little sister, Hope Derleth. And she works for Townsend Holt, who's one of the main crime guys. The crime guy who was actually supposed to save the girl at the very beginning. And she's like fixing him up, and he's asking her about Charlie. And then she turns on the seduction switch to get him more information about Charlie, because Chet brings him up, and she's like, what's wrong with Charlie? He's like, I don't know anything. And she's like, oh yeah, you don't know anything, huh? And then she gives him a big old kiss, and then she's like, dang, I was trying to seduce you, but this backfired. This is not good. And Chet's like, no, this is good. Let's get to work. And right as that happens, her brother and the big old Abamonte guy, who's described as being like over 300 pounds, but disturbingly quick on his feet, which to think about is disturbing. A 300-pound
kingpin.
fast guy, dude. Yeah, don't like that at all. Both of those guys show up, and Charlie goes absolutely bananas because he basically walks in on them getting ready to go to town on each other, and Chet's like, don't do this, dude. And the guy just starts swinging at him, and Chet literally just moves out of the way, and the guy like falls over because he's so upset he can't even throw a punch. And Abamonte is like, stop being an idiot, Charlie. Just let it go. Don't worry about women. Women don't matter. He made like an ultra sexist remark. Basically don't ever care about a woman enough to attack a man. I was like, what the heck? What is this guy talking about? And Chet said something like, I don't know what he said, but he ends up leaving. And Charlie's like, if you come back again, I'm going to kill you. And Chet's like, no, you're not. And then he goes away. And Abamonte says something about like, because he also leaves. But both Hope and Chet are like, oh no, Charlie's mixed up with Abamonte. And that's not good, because once that guy gets his claws in you for any money, he basically makes you do whatever he wants him to do. So this is also another like classic kind of noir theme, like the blackmail and owing money, and then a relatively good person forced to do bad stuff because they're under the thumb of the bad guy.
Right.
So the story just keeps getting more and more in-depth and more dark, and you start seeing all these deep underbellies. And then we jump back to Shell, and he goes out in the morning to try and get after somebody, but immediately he is shot at. And this is the part, one of the craziest scenes in the entire book. He goes back to trucker headquarters after getting beaten up, because he also got beat up there because he threw the chair at the guy. And nobody's there except for a really pretty woman who has her legs up on the table. And there's one of like the strangest scenes of dialogue of all time that happens there. Very, very weird.
Shell's always just a little bit kimonoed up, dude. He's always ready to go. And there's a lot of that going on in the book. It's like, yeah, dude, just like got a mind on something, and he's going to keep it there, dude.
Yeah. He sure will. So much so that he's keeping it there, and he walks out, and he gets absolutely bushwhacked. And I think it's Mink and Candy jump out of the bushes, and they blast him. And he's fighting for his life, but they actually shoot the dude in the head. So he goes down, and he wakes up in the hospital. And they're like, you got a thick skull, Mr. Shell. And he's like, well, I don't really have a brain. So that's why I know nothing got damaged. And there's a line later where he calls Kelly, and she's like, oh, is everything okay? Do you look different? And he said, yeah, unfortunately, I look different unless you were a giant looking down on the top of my head, which I thought was just another hilarious line. So he must have gotten shot. Like, he got grazed right up top.
Yeah.
And at this point, Chet and Shell have talked on the phone, right?
Yeah, the one thing I don't understand is why do they hate each other so much? I don't get it. Like, yeah. I can't figure out why they did that. It was Chester, right, who wanted to come at it nicely at first. Like, he was just trying to talk to Shell, and then Shell gave an attitude, and then Chester was like, it's this guy. You know what I mean? And then they just decided, all right, I hate you now. Yeah. And then it just escalated to, obviously, we'll get to the point where they're literally beating each other's skulls in. Dude. But
crazy
it's
stuff.
Like, why did we do that? What do we do?
Yeah. So at some point in the beginning, after he meets the girl, Chet gets lined up with the Senate committee called the Heart Soul Committee, which is the name of the senator who's running it, who's trying to take down the union. So he has an investigator card for them. He's like a government guy now. And he calls Shell, and he's like, hey, buddy, I've heard good stuff about you in the newspaper. And Shell's like, yeah, you too. And then he's like, I need to know who your client is. And Shell's like, no, you don't. And Chet's like, I can subpoena you, buddy. And he's like, well, how long have you been working for the Heart Soul Committee? He's like, actually, only like 15 minutes. And then Shell's like, well, how long have you been working for Ragan and his boys? And Chet's like, what? Like, actually gets, like, livid. And then Shell's like, I'm not giving you any information, and just hangs up the phone. And Chet's like, I guess the newspaper article was wrong. So they both, that's what starts them off against each other. And I think it's because Shell, when he's, like, peeping around at trucker headquarters, he hears one of the guys say, Drum really messed up the snatch. And so it sounds like Chet was working for him.
He thinks he's a part of it, right.
Yeah. But he's obviously wrong. So they just hate each other, dude. That's too funny.
Yeah, they don't like each other. And on Chester's side of things, it's almost like he's so embroiled into that like old West, Western masculinity, like the Clint Eastwood thing. Like, you call me a yellow belly, dude, hate you for life, or you're going to die now. It's like he insulted the honor of him saying that, suggesting that he worked for these mobsters. And he's like, dude, you want to get destroyed? I'll absolutely pile drive you.
Yeah, dude, I'm in. Say less. That's what's great about these guys, is they're both fairly level-headed, but they're also ready to drop the gloves, dude, and just start slugging at the beat of a heart, dude. The drop of a hat. It's too much fun.
Right.
So at this point, both of the boys decide that they're jumping across the country. Actually, I think right before this, Chet gets called by Hope to come. This is right after the guy walks in on them. He gets called by her, and she's like, I need you to come now. They just murdered Townsend Holt. And so he goes to Front Royal, Virginia, which is right by Shenandoah National Park, which is pretty cool. So if you're on the East Coast, you'll know a lot of the places that Chet talks about. And I assume if you're on the old West Coast, you'll know a lot of places that Shell talks about. So Chet goes there and immediately gets captured by the police, and they're like, you killed this guy, huh? And he's like, yeah, that's exactly why I came back to the scene of the crime, was to make sure I did the job right and you guys would catch me. And they're like, oh, you. And so they take him to jail. And then this is another big twist scene, dude, where he is in jail and calls the Senate, and the Senate's like, yeah, we'll send a lawyer over. And right away they send a lawyer over, and it's a fake dude. One of the guys at the jail is working for the union. So he told someone, this is the name of the lawyer that they're sending. Go pretend to be him and get Chet out. So now Chet was sprung by the bad guys, so he looks even more like he's on the hook for this murder, which is making Shell across the country get like fuming mad, dude. He's at the top of his red, or his white hair is turning red from anger.
Right.
And Hope sees Chet get taken out by the bad guy, and she gets super pissed about this. She's like, dude, you were double crossing me this whole time? Unacceptable. And then they blindfold him, and they take him to, all he knows from the sound is that there's a flag flapping, and he saw, like, under the blindfold, a garage door and a cyclone fence, which I think is a type of barbed wire fence. I might be wrong about that. So that's all he knows. And he had a good feeling that they were in Tidewater, Maryland. That's all he knows. And he goes there, and he's confronted by that beautiful woman that he met in the very beginning, dude. And her husband all along has been the big bad guy of all the bad guys, Mike Sand, who is described as basically, like, literally described as an ape, essentially. He's like 5'8", has shoulders broader than like a 6'2" guy, kind of has like a Neanderthal look, and is not like necessarily attractive, but the pure masculine magnetism he has would make any woman be attracted to him, kind of guy. And he's
what a stud.
Like, yeah. He sounded very Italian the way they described him. Like, they basically said he had carpet for chest hair. Like, bro, I could just picture this guy perfectly. He reminded me of my Uncle Johnny, honestly, a little bit, who also had kind of the big ape energy from, like, how they describe
right.
crime guys. You're like, that guy, Shell or Chet would be saying that guy was a big ape. I know they would be. And so after he gets them free, Shell calls Mike Sand apartment to talk to the Frost lady, because he also realized that Frost, from the very beginning, the woman who started this all, was two-timing him. She was married to the head crime guy of all the crime guys, and her father is the big snitch on all the crime guys. So he's pissed, and he calls her up. He's like, yeah, I can't find your father. Did you want me to find him so you could, kill him? And she's like, no, what's wrong with you? And he's like, and by the way, what is Chester Drum doing at your apartment this late at night? Are you guys also double-crossing me? You hired him to screw me over, huh, lady? And she's like, no, I didn't even hire him. I don't even know who you are. And Chef's like, so you hired Scott, huh? She's like, I've never even heard of Scott. So, dude, we got the femme fatale. This lady's playing both sides.
Yeah.
To what end? We do not know.
Some more noir every minute.
Too funny. It's still too funny. So the boys flip flop, and Chet goes to L.A. and Shell comes to D.C. and everywhere Shell goes, he's like, yeah, we hate Chet, don't we? And everyone's like, no, he's like one of the nicest guys.
It's a very funny sequence.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, he's like, huh? How about that son of a bitch? And like, why would you say that? He's amazing. What are you talking about?
There's a line, dude. I gotta find it. It was too funny. This is to get to what you were saying earlier, is Shell always has women on his mind, dude. It's like a problem.
Yeah,
honestly. That guy's locked into it.
Get some help, man.
Let me see here. Oh, dude, it was too funny. Yeah, here you go. So he rolls up to the soup kitchen place, and he sees this beautiful brunette, and he's like, there's a guy who works across the street. His name's Chester Drum. She's like, oh, I love Chet. And he's like, what? And she's like, yeah, I've been to his office. It's great. And he said, well, do you know where he lives? He said, he's told me about where he lives. And Shell says, among other things, I thought this Drum was a despoiler, a ravisher of sweet young womanhood. I took another look at the little lovely. Man, it would be fun to ravish and despoil her too. Bro,
this guy, dude, chill out, buddy. I mean, there's a part where he's snooping around and he just has to cop a feel of the panties, dude. He's just like, yeah, very sick, very nice. And you're like, Shell, get your head in the game, dude. What are you doing?
Brutal stuff. So he says another line where he's like, man, this Drum had this little lovely convinced, and he was selling her a raft of lies, just like he was selling the rest of the people that he knew. It was too funny. Like,
yeah, dude, he's so convinced he's a dirtbag.
Yeah, neither one of these dudes can believe that the other one could be a good guy. So Chet goes across the country, and he goes to Shell's apartment, and he sees that he wears a size 44 long suit or something like that, which means these dudes are big guys. Like, that is a massive suit. This right now that I'm wearing now is a 40 regular. I'm not like a big guy by any stretch of the imagination, but two sizes bigger, and both of them weigh like around 200 pounds, dude, and they're
big
like
boy.
6 foot. It makes a fella have a complex.
Yeah, it's the light heavyweight division of the UFC. These guys, they're just all the massive guys like Luke Rockhold,
studs, dude.
And Joel Romero, dude.
Both of them have no hesitation describing how jacked they are. Luke pointed that out like right at the rim.
Dude, these guys, and I'm sure they do it in every book. How often do they want to tell me that you're 6'2", 205 pounds? I'm like, I get it, my guy. You're a big guy. Yeah, Let's chill.
We know you're big, and we know that there's very little fat on your frame. You say that every book. Get out of here. Stop making me feel bad about myself.
It's so funny.
And so he finds in Shell's jacket in his house a napkin for the Garden of Allah hotel and motel place, and he goes and he finds Kelly, and she's like, Shell said you were a dirtbag, and he's like, I'm not a dirtbag. She's like, you know what, I believe you. I think that you need to go talk to these people. And so he goes and he talks to those people, and it turns out that Papa Frost, the big guy who has to give all the information away, has a secret hideout up by Arrowhead Lake. And so Chet goes there. Meanwhile, Shell's over there in D.C., and he finds daughter Frost, Mrs. Sand, the femme fatale of all femme fatales possibly. She's like, yeah, my dad has a little like hideaway up there in the mountains. And Shell's like, why didn't you look there first? He was not kidnapped. He just went out to get some time by himself. And she's like, oh, he wasn't kidnapped? Why I didn't realize that. He's like, yeah, you should have thought of that right off the rip. So the two of them go back, and this is where our boys first meet, dude. Chet goes up these stairs outside, like in the woods. They're redwood stairs up to this cabin. And right as he's up there, there's already like 3 cars there. They're all the mob cars. Things are looking bad for Dr. Frost. And he's like, oh no, a car's coming. So he ducks in the cover. He's got his gun and his flashlight. And he's sitting there waiting. And who runs up the stairs but Shell Scott, dude? And he turns on the light. He's like, freeze. I got the gun on you. And Shell just jumps right into action, dude. And then they kind of have like a sword fight with their guns. I thought that was a super cool description. He was like, he parried my gun as I was swinging it down on him. And then they just slam into each other. And they're like in a clinch. And they trip over a dead body and just tumble down like 15 flights of stairs. It was too wild. Both of them end up like soaked in mud, their faces in the dirt, and they can't even stand up. But all they want to do when they stand up is beat the heck out of the other guy. I think Shell like drops to his knees. Chet is got his face in the dirt, and Mrs. Frost runs over, and she's like, Shell, are you okay? And she's like, wait a minute, you're not Shell, you're Chet, which is how Luke and I fill every chapter of the book. You're like, oh man, that was a rough one. Shell's like, wait a minute, I've been reading Chet this whole time. Damn it.
Yeah, I was like, can you believe what just happened with Shelly? And you're like, that was Chester. I was like, oh, my bad. Sorry.
Funny, too funny. And so Chet jumps up, he's ready to duke it out, and immediately gets knocked out from behind by the crime guys. And Shell dives for cover, and he's blasting at him, but they get away with Dr. Frost. And he runs right after him. And Chet comes to. The taxi cab driver he's been working with is like, they got you good, buddy. Sorry, I've never fired a gun before. I couldn't help you out. And Chet's like, that's okay. And so he flies back and goes to Tidewater, Maryland, looking for this place that he saw blindfolded. And he realizes it's at an airport. And so Shell flies back as well. And this is where you get one of the craziest scenes of all fiction history. The dudes run into each other sneaking outside of this airport, and both of them have their guns out, and both of them look past the other and see that there's a whole like airport building filled with crime guys. And so neither one of them can blast away because they'll give information away that they're there. And the two dudes just go at it. They've been waiting the entire book. We're like, this book's probably 100,000 words long. And they're like, 60,000 of them were just building up to this 20,000 word fist fight, dude. And it is crazy good. I mean, they're just slugging for maybe like a chapter, like 3 chapters or something like that. It's just too much fun.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really well done fist fight. And I told you before we started, I think, but I think I love how, similar to Louis L'Amour, you can tell that these guys have some working knowledge of hand-to-hand combat in some way, whether that's boxing or whatever they did. Maybe they were in the military, but like they put so much of the detail and specifics like that only someone who would fight would call it that. You know what I mean? Like they're using the right terminology. It makes it feel more authentic. And then you have the added stuff like breaking his hand. I go crazy for that stuff, dude. I love that because even wrapped hands in fights, people break their hands in boxing. If you street fight for more than like 40 minutes, probably you have a high percentage chance that your hand's going to break. And so when I see that, I know that someone actually knows what they're talking about and is like gotten into some fights. Because in this, it's Chester, right, who breaks his hand.
Yeah, dude.
And then it becomes an actual problem that is referred to for the rest of the thing. It's not like, I broke my hand, super badass. It was like, they kept remembering to bring it back up and use it as tension. And from that fight scene on, and I know I'm not trying to get ahead of myself, but all the way to the end fight sequence, that these guys are really great writers, and the comedy and the prose and the dialogue, everything will keep you engaged. But these guys are like straight up Leonardo da Vinci when it comes to action writing itself, like the actual fights crazy. And the gunfights, like it's so impressive. And I think I want to, re-listen to those parts, get these books and study the way they do fights because I want to up my fight game. Like I always love Robert E. Howard's fights. I like Louis L'Amour's fights. There's certain authors that have really good fights, and these guys, I'm adding them to the list because that was so stinking cool and so well written. And one thing they did, one last thing before I'll let you start on this, is that the way that they kept it kind of it makes sense orienting me to the fight. Like I was never. It's so easy for me to get lost and confused, especially when writing my fight scenes or reading them, where I'm like, okay, I'm so confused, especially when it's gunfights. You're like, was that guy over here? Where's it? These guys are fantastic at making the reader feel oriented and a part of it. And I can't say enough of how sick it was. Then you're jumping from Chester's point of view in the fight to Shell's point of view in the fight.
Yeah, dude.
They blend it together so well. So incredible stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. That fist fight scene between the two is probably my favorite written fight scene of all time, and it's funny because it's between two good guys. There's like a couple scenes where Chet says something like, he's like, I'm getting you and Ragan. You're done, Shell. And Shell's like, we hadn't even been fighting that long, and I already scrambled this guy's brain. He's the guy who works with Ragan. And so there's
funny, dude.
There's a scene where Chet says something like, you soft-headed son of a bitch. And Shell's like, hey, no, you are. And don't say that to me. And then they just start slugging even more, dude. And Chet says a line where he's like, this guy knew at least one of the secrets of unarmed combat. And then he's like, and I threw a punch and he immediately counterpunched it, which means he knew at least two of the secrets of unarmed combat. I was like, dude, what was the first one? Like, what are the rest? Like, why?
Oh, funny.
And so, dude, they just, I mean, like I said, they are slugging it out. Luke brought up 40 minutes might actually be a pretty reasonable amount of time that these guys are fighting, because they literally say, imagine two equally matched heavyweights who are in the ring just slugging, and neither one will give up. And at the end of like the 12, 15 rounds, because back in boxing, right, they just fought till you died.
It used to be 15, or before the 15, it was like, last man standing, no rounds, forget those things. We're on round 107.
Yeah, so there's a scene where Chet's like, or Shell's like, Chet came running at me, his teeth bared, like his lips pulled across his teeth. It wasn't because he was trying to, that's just how his lips were from now on. Like, bro, what? And so there's a scene too where Shell's like, I was waiting for him to get up, and then I was ready to go after him, but I realized I was still sitting down. You're like, too good, dude. And there's another part where Chet and Shell are both on the ground, and Chet's sitting there, and he's like, what are you, soft? And Shell like gets up real pissed and dives at him, and Chet just rolls right back on top of him. I was like, dude, this is the type of writing that really, like you said, these guys knew what a fight was like, because you get further into the fight, and there's a scene where Chet has a wide open like uppercut or right cross that should put Shell out, and he says, it had no snap. It was literally just my body weight that knocked him over, because I couldn't punch anymore, because it was just like literally a club essentially that had just weight behind it.
These authors, dude, they did not shy away from showcasing like the less glamorous, I guess, part of the fights and stuff like that, where, to your point, like getting more tired, and they actually have stamina and stuff that goes down. But also, like, in the end sequence, I think it's Shell, maybe, his like knees are shaking. He's like, not necessarily that I was scared, but there's so much tension, and I'm like, focused, like the knees shaking, his heart being the hula dancer's butt cheeks. It's like, and I really like how they put you in the feeling without having to do any cliches, like, I'm apt to throw in the, his adrenaline was pumping or something stupid. Like, these guys make it engaging every time they're telling you this is so high stakes right now, and we're going to show you that in a visual show don't tell kind of manner that is unique and you haven't heard it before. These guys are really, really good writers when it comes down to it.
It's fantastic. So they have this knockdown, drag out slugfest of all slugfests, and at the end they're both just sitting down. And what's cool is it's like you get it in sort of like snatches, the way that you would, I imagine, an actual fight, where like both of these dudes black out for a few seconds, and then they were like, yeah, I don't know what happened, but I looked over at Chet, and he was sitting on his fanny with his arms propped up on his knees, breathing through his mouth as hard as he could, and I was on my hands and knees looking up at him, breathing through my mouth as hard as I could. And Shell's like, I don't know if this is going to work anymore. And Chet's like, yeah, we got to figure out a better way to end this fight. And then both of the boys, Shell says something like, well, if we were going to talk, I was going to get a more comfortable position, lying down on the ground. So he just rolls on the ground. And it's like sleeting on these dudes because it's the middle of winter. It's like right before Christmas in
nice Christmas book, dude. Nice
Maryland.
Christmas
Yeah,
book.
dude, it's a Christmas story. And both of these guys just rip into the other for like 5-10 minutes, saying like, I couldn't believe you were so stupid. Obviously, I'm on the good guy's side. And Shell says something like, brother, we may have been barking up the wrong tree here. And Chet's like, do you think? And then the one guy says something that one of the greatest lines of all time. Oh man, I can't remember what it was. He says, after that fight, I don't think either one of us could stop a female pickpocket. I think is what he said. I was like, yeah, dude, they're in trouble. And they were like, but we've got a whole probably like 15-20 crime guys we got to take down now. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, dude. Whole airport full. A picture the old PS2 games, dude, where they used to like do the pan across all the bad guys. Digga, 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 digga.
Yeah.
And you're just, oh man.
In Mafia 1, where you have to fight your way out of the airport.
Yeah, dude.
Is another classic.
Some of those levels, dude, in Mafia 2 gave me just the ultimate rage inside my body, dude. I have lost this, like the part where you had to go on the docks and bust up the Union guys. Yeah. I died a million times, dude. I remember trying to like break my Xbox controller, dude. Snap it in half, but I was too weak back then. So
it's a good thing that you and I were not Shell Scott or Chester Drum in the video game version of this, because we'd be cooked, dude.
We'd be smoked, dude.
I was literally thinking about this the other day. How sick would it be for a co-op video game of double
Shell Scott to Chester Drum? Yeah, I love that.
So sick. But anyways,
any game developers out there? Come on.
Yeah, somebody do this. We got to be close to the copyrights going away. But these dudes hatch the absolutely most harebrained plan of all time, where each one is going to sneak into the other. So Ragan is flying in, and Sand and Abamonte are on the other side, and each of these guys has been trying to overthrow the other one to take full control of the Union for the whole book so far. And these boys are like, dude, what if we get them to really go at it? And so Shell's like, all right, Chet, you go shoot a couple shots from over there. I'll go shoot a couple shots from over there. Hopefully they don't recognize us. And to Luke's point, they just do a really great job building the tension of like, Chet's in there, and they're like, wait a minute, who are you, guy? And he's like, I'm the taxi driver guy from the beginning. What is wrong with you? And they're like, no, we don't recognize you, guy. And he's like, they just shot at me. Let's get them. And then they're kind of like, they're shooting at us. And he's like, yeah, let's get him. And they all just are like, all right, we got to get him. And Shell does the same thing. And he said, luckily, my face looked so bad that no one would be able to recognize me, period. So dude,
I got to thank Chester Drum for that one.
Yeah, for the first time, I have something nice to say about Chet Drum. Absolute gang war to end all gang wars, dude. We're talking like 20 guys on each side just blasting it out on the airport. Nobody's sure why they're shooting. Everybody's like, they're killing us. That's one of my favorite lines is Shell says something like, I fired a couple shots and then looked at him and screamed in a high-pitched voice, they're massacring us.
Hey, I raised my pitch, dude. That's so funny. He's like, not too bad. If it was too bad, I got blasted.
What's so funny, too, is that this, like, we're right on the verge of describing the ultimate noir, and also right on the verge of describing the ultimate Bugs Bunny episode. You know? Like, these guys are literally slugging each other to Kingdom Come, and also turning the bad guys against each other. It's just too funny. So, yeah, you should pick up this book and read it, because they just fight each other, fight the bad guys fight each other, everybody's fighting. It's too good. Crazy final action sequence.
And it's so, like, this is why I like reading books from you or other authors who I know have some level of competence or groundedness in masculinity in their real life, because dude, you can just tell these guys were real guys that like enjoyed being guys, and they were unapologetically masculine as hell. You read this book, dude, is not for the faint of the 2025 heart. The guys would get canceled left, right, center. Like it was so, like, not shocking, but so refreshing to read this and be like, whoa, dude. Media used to be so cool. Like, these books used to be so stinking cool. And, you know, we lose that if us as authors become so soft that we can't touch and tap into, like, whatever this version of being a man is that we used to write about and love and have abundance of. Because, dude, reading this definitely scratched, like, all the itches that a dude has. Like, it's just so, it like lights a fire in you, a masculine fire. Like, you sent me the videos of you doing urban exploration yesterday. It's that same feeling of looking at that and be like, dude, no fucking shit, I like that. I just, you know, you read this book and you're like, I want to go do something. I want to go, like, rip a deer's head off, you know, and like sit in the tree stand and jump down on a boar and strangle it to death. Like, that's what I want to do after reading this. That's what I want to do after reading this.
I agree. It really is one of those. You read this book. I mean, it all kind of started with Luke and I. He was like, I don't have time to read this book, and I was like, no, dude, trust me, you're gonna want to read this book. It's like just about the most masculine thing you could ever read. And then we got into a debate about Rocky and this, which was more masculine, and they obviously scratch much different itches, right? Like, Rocky is like quintessential. I mean, it has a ton of substance and like really good messages behind it. This has substance behind it, but there is no like good message other than, dude, it is freaking sick to be a man. Like, that's,
exactly, it really is that. It's like these are advertisements for, do you want to be a sick guy? You want to be more like a Shell Scott sick guy? You want to be more like a Chester Drum sick guy? Either way, you're gonna want to be badass in this life, and let me tell you why. Yeah, man. And you can tell these authors were dudes that lived the life. Yeah. There's, you know, the whole experience of their fight ending and him talking about how it kind of fused them together in a way that wouldn't have happened if they didn't fist fight. Like, that is fighting 101. Like, that's one of the first things you ever learn in fighting is, like, after you fight the guy, your level of respect, your friendship goes right up. Right. I hated this kid in 4th grade, like, hated him. And we got into a fist fight. And then we became friends, dude. Shook hands afterwards. We were friends. And, like, that story repeats itself time and time and time again. Rocky 5, dude. One of the greatest movies of all time. Rocky 5, when Rocky's son fights his bullies, what do they do in the next scene? Dude, they're shaking hands. He's over at his house. They're friends. And so I loved that was even touched on with these guys. I was like, dude, as soon as they fought, they were like, all right, this guy.
Mental alchemy, I think, is the word.
Yeah, dude. What a way to say that. The guy's the best.
It really is one of those things where, like, you read it and you're like, there's something cool about having a friend who is, like, competition to a certain degree. You know, like, oh, this guy's a little too much like me. I got to kick his ass. And then you're like, well, he's actually a lot like me. This guy's actually pretty cool. Like, maybe I was off kilter a little bit there. Let me reframe my mindset, and you become really good friends and can do great stuff together. But to this point, let me read some of these quotes. Yeah, this will be fun. So here we go. This one is Shell just woke up after he saved Kelly's life, and they spent the night together. He's making her breakfast. And Shell, for one thing, hates breakfast. You'll find that out if you read any of the books. So she says, Shell, yeah? I smell smoke. Is something burning? Well, yeah, but don't worry, I can handle it. What's burning? Well, some toast and potatoes and eggs, things like that. It's all burning? Yeah, don't worry, I can handle it. I heard some thumping sounds and scraping movements and the click of a door. In a moment, Kelly, her flaming hair tangled, green eyes still a little heavy with sleep, walked barefooted into the kitchenette. She'd found an old robe of mine and had it tent-like around her. It dragged on the floor. She wrinkled her abundantly freckled nose and blinked at the shambles of my kitchenette. It was pretty shambled, and you wouldn't believe how smoky. I was just drying off the toaster when she came in. All right, let's just talk about that right there. That is a fantastic piece of writing. Because
Drying off the toaster, dude.
Why would he be drying off the toaster? It is literally like an ultimate tagline there, dude.
That is hilarious.
She said, "What in the world are you doing?" "Drying off the toaster." She shook her head. "Do you mean to say you washed the toaster?" "Of course not. Who would wash a toaster? I just happened to drop it in some water in the sink and it blew a fuse." She closed her eyes and looked pained. Then she fixed her eyes on me and asked, "Shell, how did you just happen to drop the toaster in some water?" "Well, I pushed the toast down a second time and forgot it. When it started to smoke, I upended it over the sink to take the toast out, and it sort of slipped. While I was putting in another fuse so it would go again, the potatoes got a little ruined. By that time, the eggs..." "Never mind, Shell. You go sit in the corner. I'll fix breakfast." Dude,
Oh, that's too good.
absolute masterclass in giving the people just enough that they're like, why was he washing the toaster? What? And then he burns the whole house down, dude. So another line, he gets off the phone, or on the phone with Chester Drum. I thought this is just like such clever writing. Gets back to what we talked about with charade and stuff. Chet says, "Scott, I'm getting more than a little tired of you." And this is from Shell's perspective. "My steely control slipped just a fraction, about 9/10." It's so funny because when you say like just a fraction, you think just the littlest bit. But bro said a fraction that was basically all of it is gone. He lost 90% of his control. Crazy work there.
This guy loves the specifics too. He was like, it couldn't have been more than a moment, but to me, it felt like a month and a half. In the end fight when he was talking about a lull in time.
Too good. Let me see here. This has got to be one of the best descriptions of characters of all time. Like we said, most of these, Shell is hilarious. I do like Chet better, but Shell has got to be one of the funniest guys ever. So he's describing Glasses and Rover for the first time. All right, they were quite a pair, but somehow they didn't seem to add up to more than one. The little guy was now peering up at me, bug-eyed behind the thick glasses, and if there was the light of intelligence in his eyes, it was a very dim light indeed. If any original thoughts had ever struck him, they had surely struck a glancing blow. They had not bounced off onto the other boy either. No, this was a case where two heads were not better than one. Between them, they appeared to have enough brains to scramble with a one-egg omelet. In fact, they gave me the impression that perhaps something like that had already happened inside their heads.
Guys roasted these dudes into oblivion. That's what I mean. It's literally stand-up comedian level stuff here. These guys are hilarious.
It's so funny. He said, "I bet you've forgotten what I said, so I'll repeat it. Keep the hell away from me." They looked at each other, searching through their egg for the answer to the impasse. It's too funny.
Oh, man.
Oh, I love it, dude. Let me see if I can find anything else. They're too good. Who comes up with this stuff?
Why did we not get a sequel to that?
I know, it's
That's what I wanna
heartbreaking stuff.
Unbelievable.
Oh, man. Yeah, let's see here. There's a scene where they're trying to come up with a plan, and Shell's like, "What's the plan, Chet?" And this is after they've become friends. And Chet's like, "Well, I think if we might be able to, and then that probably work, right?" And Shell's like, "Yeah, that'll probably work." And then he says, like, this is a perfect example of how low the human mind can sink to think that was the best things that we could think of. It's too funny. And so here's this is after they've been slugging it out for a while. Chet says, the plane is flying in, and he says, "That's great." Or Shell says, "That's great, probably 20 guys. It's also a bomber, and they'll drop things on us." Drum pointed, "There it is." I followed his finger all over the sky. Finally, it steadied enough so I could get the general area. And I saw something weird, frightening even. It looked like part of a huge puffy eyelid, a hideous flesh saucer floating. I closed my eyes and it went away. But of course, it was part of my huge puffy eyelid. It's literally brutal stuff. But I thought that line's so funny. You read it and he's like, "I followed his finger all over the sky." Because this
you just picture him wobbling, dude, just die.
Too good.
Wow, what a book, dude. What a book.
There you go. Check it out. we spoiled the whole thing, but it won't be just as funny reading it. I've read
Yeah.
it 3 times, and every time I'm laughing out loud. So, dude, to close the loop here we got to end this case out. What do you think? What is noir? Is this book noir? What is noir as a total? Did we come to any conclusions with our Noir November?
I don't know, dude. I don't know if this is a cop out or if I'm beginning where I'm ending where I began. Like to me,
it's a circle.
it's
Go on.
But noir just meaning dark and all that. Like I think, and there's this is why there's so much nuance. It's like, to me, it's any kind of dark story that its focus and kind of narrative intention is darkness, and whether that's like darkness in humanity or dark subject matter, like if its focus and narrative intent is that, whatever that is, the darkness, that seems to be noir to me. And that's why this one doesn't feel like it fits that definition, because yes, it is dark, but the narrative intention is more so like a fun, adventurous romp.
Right.
And that's what I want to give you as the author, is like, I want to give you this feeling. But if the author intends, like, I want to give you this bleak, nihilistic, dark feeling, that seems to tend to lend itself more to noir for me.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know anything about noir. That's what I learned.
Yeah, the more I know about noir, the less I know about it.
The only thing I know is I'm off the case. I'm done with this.
To give this book one little last touch of bleakness, the femme fatale who got them both hired in the beginning actually was a bad guy as well, all along. She was a murderer. Classic. They had to round us out with that. So full spoiler alert. It's over. You're cooked. Maybe I should have put the spoiler alert first, but yeah, dude, I am uncertain as to the definition of noir. I do like what you were saying, where if it's a story that like focuses on kind of how dark the world is and how bad things are, then it falls in there. The sprinkling of humor and like joy in that, I'm not sure when it becomes too much, that because that's what we get to the end of, like, what would you even classify this book as genre wise? And I guess it's just a
crime adventure,
hard-boiled crime adventure, because I don't know, it has noir in a lot of places, but it's just so much fun. And not that when you read a noir you're not supposed to have fun, but I think it is a little somber to that point. I mean, we talked about it before. The definition of noir, according to the dictionary, is content that focuses on crime and cynicism and fatalism. And both of those things, I think, cynicism and fatalism, are both not necessarily ultra negative, like they sound super negative, but if your cynicism is believing that people do stuff out of self-interest, I think that that's by and large true. Fatalism is the belief that you can never escape your fate, essentially, which is also sort of true. Like, I don't know, both of those things,
like you said, if you make your fate, if you just believe that your fate's going to work out for the best, then that can actually be a positive, right? Yeah, right. It's like, I'm fated to succeed. I'm not worried about it. You could go that way, or you could be like, we're all doomed in the end. What does it matter? There's both. Both of them are the same thing.
Right. So technically, if fatalism and cynicism are the only things, you could have a positive noir, which doesn't seem possible. But all of that's to say that I think that it is like, you can have people that are dealing with these things and be kind of positive or laugh about it, because that's the thing that you kind of discount, or that I think that that's the thing that a lot of the people are like, oh, noir has to be about only bad endings, about bad people doing bad things and going through that. Kind of the fatal flaw side is that a lot of people who are going through rough times have I have to laugh about it instead of cry about it coping mechanism, So they could be going through the worst stuff in the entire world, and they can still be like, it may be just a shell Scott perhaps, a slight veneer to keep them from losing their minds, but they could be cracking jokes. They could be having a good time to all appearances as they deal with these like truly horrific situations. I mean, that's that's just how it is. That's like why a lot of police officers have really dark humor. Like these guys
Right.
have to find ways to cope with stuff. So I think that there is something to be said for the funny noirs or the harebrained noirs or whatever it is. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think that I do similar to you. I circle back to like the definition of following characters who are cynical and hard-boiled and deal with rough things in life, and they either process it well or they process it poorly, and the whole engaging part of the story is to see how they will kind of handle the situations. So it's a fantastic genre. I'm glad we got to do a 4-week study deep dive on it. Well, maybe 3.5 weeks. We'll give Double and Trouble, for 2 great characters, we'll give it half of a noir for whatever it's worth. But yeah, check the book out. Let us know what you think about it. Super interested to hear people's thoughts.
And then one day we'll be doing Shell Scott's Nudie Beach Summer. I forget the real title, but that's what I'm going to call it. And I'm excited to read that one.
2026 will be a fun year. Since Luke is now a huge Shell Scott guy, check out his Instagram.
It's the coolest picture ever, by the way, of Shell Scott. What the heck? I love that picture, dude.
Yeah, dude.
It is so cool.
Also, I just love shoulder holsters. It's too sick that these guys are just strapped up in the shoulder holsters, dude. Too dang cool. But my third favorite book of all time is Strip for Murder.
Strip for Murder.
Strip for Murder by Richard S. Prather,
right,
where Shell Scott invades a nudist colony, dude. I know what you're thinking, and you're wrong. You're thinking this is going to be like just not a good book. There's no way. Like, it may be entertaining, but there's no way it's a good book. But this is honestly, for me, I think it's up there as like maybe the best book ever written, because the story is absolutely crazy. And you think, if I told you the 3 big twists or 3 things that happened in this book, you'd be like, there's no way that could be a serious, like, well-told story. But it is fantastic, and everything makes sense. And literally, you get to the end of like, this could not have been written any other way. This is perfect. So we'll talk about that in sometime early 2020.
Yes, we will.
It'll be fun. But Noir November is now complete. Drop your comments. Tell us what you think of it, how you feel. Join the Discord so we can discuss it more. Read this book so we can argue about whether or not it has any noir in it at all, or if it's fully noir. It'll be fun. That's what it's all about.
And the last thing I'll leave you guys with is, if you read this book and you like Chester Drum or Shell Scott, this is your time to get on Nate Colt. And you can tell us about the new Nate Colt, Crime is My Caper, in a second, because I really do think, reading this, I was like, dude, the only person doing this now is Nathanael Hummel. Like, this is the only way I can scratch the itch in the modern day. So tell us about the new Nate Colt book, dude.
Yeah. It will be coming out end of the year, this year. One more Nate Colt before 2025 is over, along with some web series episodes. So pretty excited about that. I clearly have a lot of work set out before me, with about a month left in the year, but it'll all be locked and loaded here soon. But yes, Crime is My Caper. It takes place a little earlier in Nate Colt's life. So it's right after he's found out some truly horrific news, and he has disappeared. He's gone off to Indonesia to kind of lose himself. And as he's going through this with his background as a special commando in the special commanding unit of the French Foreign Legion, he's really good at fighting people. So he runs into a guy who ends up being a pirate, and that guy kind of hires him as sort of like a strong-arm guy. And then all of a sudden things go wrong with that, and he runs into a beautiful woman and her father, and he has to help them get out of a jam, which then leads him into working with, he's Italian, so he has family who are in the mafia. And so there's some mafia stuff in Indonesia, and it gets pretty crazy from there. There's a mystery to solve, there's some treasure to find, there's a beautiful woman, and there's pirates and mafia, and the combining of
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine how lucky we are getting this kind of content, dude? Mafia, pirates, a little love, a little masculinity. This is great. I love this.
Thanks, man. I will say, it is. You hear pirates and mafia, like, man, this is crazy. Like, this is weird crossover story that's not going to be like
stuff dreams are made of, dude.
But it's very grounded. I think it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't seem harebrained at all when you read it. You gotta believe me.
Yeah, you gotta.
Yeah, but if you liked Treasure Is My Trade, this one is a lot longer than Treasure Is My Trade. So you're in for a ride, and it's quick paced. I will say that the one thing that I found as I've been finishing up the edits on it is that the storyline meanders more than I thought it did. You know, it's kind of just like understanding a character who's gone through incredible loss and pain, and kind of this is the story of him trying to become okay again. But it isn't like that sounds like a sad boy book. Is it noir? Maybe. But it's the same thing that we have with Shell and Chet, where they're cracking jokes the whole time. So It should be entertaining. You'll get to know the character a lot better after this one, but I think it's a pretty fun one.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it. You guys have about 1 month until it. So if you haven't read Treasure Is My Trade yet, go pick up Treasure Is My Trade, get yourself caught up on that, and go check out the web series, because new episodes, dude. You got to be ready for those. I've seen some clips of the new one. Cannot be more hyped, dude. We get a little
this one
hand-to-hand action. It looks very, very cool.
I can give a quick synopsis of that too, and then we
go
can
for it. Yes.
So this is fully finishing, like this is a continuation of the first 3 seasons that have been on YouTube since I started that in 2018 or something like that. This is continuing that journey. So Nate Colt is hired to infiltrate the compound of a Russian war criminal to get a book. So he sneaks in. We got some nice like secret agent stealth action dude with suppressors, punching people, snapping people's necks. It's just too much fun.
Living the dream, dude.
It flashes back to a time when Nate was in an underground, like he was in prison, and there was an underground illegal professional like gambling gladiator ring going on. So we get a little bit of that too.
Let's go.
And there's an interrogation scene, some pipe smoking, some fist fights, some gun fights, climbing some stuff, dude. It's pretty cool. So I think you guys will really enjoy it.
Well, I'm pumped. I can't wait for this, dude. I know if you guys like anything we talk about or do here, this is everything you'd want from the genre in one character. Nate Colt does it all, dude.
Thanks,
I love
man.
this stuff. So
I appreciate
keep
that.
it up.
Yeah, and 2026 is right around the corner, so we got some big things coming that we'll reveal more and more, talk a little more about as the year comes to an end. So thank you guys for joining us for the Men's Adventure Fiction Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Nice, dude. We did it!